Yeah, it's, the irony of that subject is very interesting, and I want to go to the next video so that we can, because there's some stuff here we have to talk about. It's just, Brian, it's just that we are the strongest voice for religious liberty in all historical accounts, in ways that the Seventh Adventist Church has stood for that, even during the abolitionist movement. We were one of the few churches who took such a bold stand during that time, and it's been written in record. So it's just that what's even like anti-war position and stuff like that. It's crazy to me that the one church who preach Bible prophecy, advocates for religious liberty, is pushing back against Mark of the Beast, Sunday law, because there's going to be a restriction of religious liberty, restrict the liberty of their own members, and don't even realize they're doing it. It's crazy to me. I just can't reconcile those two. It's almost like, where is the disconnect here that they cannot realize on a local level, you guys are actually you violating religious liberty while you preach it in your seminars and bringing people into the church under the notion of religious liberty. It's kind of crazy to me. I can't understand that.
Do you think
it's the interview with Nicodemus?
Is the interview?
The Lord went and said, you go and win one proselyte, and when you bring them in, you make them 2 times more the sons of hell than yourself.
Mercy.
Unless the man is converted and born again, we will carry out the biddings of Satan. Mm-hmm. And people don't like hearing plain talk, but this is the reality. At the crux of the matter, conversion is paramount in making sure that we respect the individual rights of others.
Amen. Wow. Mercy. All right. Well, this one is going to start some fire in the room again, because I think we were trying to have this discussion last time, and then the light went out. And we said, we got to come back. We got to come back for this one. This is way too good. I don't think my wife had a chance to hear it. So this is going to be very interesting. So let's take a listen. This is Tim Ramsey, and he's sharing a story here that I think we can speak about.
I'm going to tell you the story of a church that was founded in the 19th century in the eastern part of the United States. It grew out of a focus on intense Bible study, especially Bible prophecy, and it has since grown into a multinational, multi-member movement with a strong emphasis on witnessing and evangelism. Its core doctrines include the belief that Christ's literal coming has been or will be preceded by an invisible event in heaven in which Christ receives his kingdom. The church's historically skeptical view of the world politics left its members shocked by the revelation that its governing body was an approved member of the United Nations as an NGO. And I'm referring, of course, to the Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe you know their story. In 1963, they voted officially to accept this resolution. This international organization, the United Nations, stands for world sovereignty by political men. For years, men without faith in God's kingdom have endeavored to get all people to worship this international image of human political sovereignty as the best hope for earthly peace and security, in fact, the last hope for humanity. However, we as witnesses of the sovereign God Jehovah will continue refusing to engage in such idolatrous worship, for we see under angelic enlightenment that God has smitten such idolaters with a malignant ulcer, symbolically speaking, that will spell death to them as spiritually diseased image worshipers who worship a man-made political creation rather than the creator of heaven and earth. That was a pretty strongly worded statement, wasn't it? And in 1963, the Jehovah's Witnesses officially voted to accept this as their church's official view and statement regarding the United Nations. Now, we, of course, don't agree with all of their views on prophecy or the Bible, but they have good reason for viewing the United Nations this way. Maybe you've heard of the United Nations Meditation Room, which is buried deep in the middle of the United Nations building there in New York City. Sometimes called a room of quiet, and it's very interesting. That block that you see is a 6-ton piece of iron ore, and the foundation goes all the way down to the bedrock, I don't know, probably hundreds of feet below. It's an altar, actually, 4 feet high. It rests on 2 narrow cross pieces. And there's a pamphlet that at least at one point was there explaining it, and it says this: "The stone in the middle of the room has more to tell us. We may see it as an altar, empty not because there is no God, not because it is an altar to an unknown God, but because it is dedicated to the God whom man worships under many names and in many forms." So is this room and this altar dedicated to the God of the Bible? There's absolutely no way. right? It's the other power in this world. And by the way, to get to this room, you have to walk kind of a maze or labyrinth, which is an occultic type thing, in darkness, and then you finally emerge into this light here. So the whole thing is just really very occultic, even the designs on that wall that you see there. Alice Bailey, who was kind of the prophetess of spiritualism, wrote this: evidence of the growth of the human intellect along the needed receptive lines for the preparation of the new age can be seen in the planning of various nations and in the efforts of the United Nations to formulate a world plan. From the very start of this unfoldment, 3 occult factors have governed the development of all these plans. And we don't need to worry about what those are. There's the connection, right? Here's another gentleman that for 40 years worked with the United Nations. He worked all the way up to Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, Robert Mueller. And he was often called the prophet of the United Nations. He wrote this: no human force will ever be able to destroy the United Nations, for the United Nations is not a mere building or a mere idea. It is not a man-made creation. The United Nations is the vision light of the Absolute Supreme. At his choice hour, the Absolute Supreme will ring his own victory bell here on earth through the loving and serving heart of the United Nations. So the Jehovah's Witnesses had good reasons for being skeptical about what was happening there. I'll just share one more statement here. This was another religious leader that he was an Indian spiritual leader who taught meditation in connection with the United Nations. And he said, the dream of the United Nations, the vision of the United Nations, the reality of the United Nations came from the highest, the absolute highest. Well, which highest do you think he's referring to? Can't be the God of the Bible. For the establishment of world peace, the UN, the temple, UN, the shrine, UN, the heart, and UN, the soul are unparalleled. The United Nations is not a mere building. The United Nations is a reservoir of divine light for the manifestation of world peace. Okay. So all of that just to illustrate why the Jehovah's Witnesses were so skeptical and wary of the United Nations, and why they were so shocked in 2001 to discover that their church had secretly been a part of the United Nations for almost a decade. So the news story was broken by an article in The Guardian, British newspaper. And this was published on October 6, 2001. The United Nations is being asked to investigate why it has granted associate status to the Jehovah's Witnesses, the fundamentalist U.S.-based Christian sect, which regards it as the scarlet beast predicted in the book of Revelation. So they had been teaching their members for decades that the United Nations was the beast of Revelation 17. And now it turns out for 9 years, the leadership had secretly been connected with the United Nations. Disaffected members of the 6 million strong group, which has 130,000 followers in the UK, have accused the Witnesses' elderly governing body of hypocrisy in secretly accepting links with an organization that they continue to denounce in apocalyptic terms. Now, the newspaper article concluded this way: in an internal document, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society describes its policy as a theocratic war strategy. It claims, and now they're quoting from the Watchtower magazine, which of course is the official magazine of Jehovah's Witnesses, in time of spiritual warfare, it is proper to misdirect the enemy by what? Hiding the truth. It is done unselfishly. It does not harm anyone. On the contrary, it does much good. Do you hear Jesus saying that? I have to hide the truth in order to misdirect the enemy? Of course not. So this created a huge hubbub and turmoil within the Jehovah's Witnesses. And within 2 days of this newspaper article being published, the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses had sent in a letter to the United Nations requesting to withdraw their status as a NGO. And the day after that, on October 9, the UN replied saying, "We grant your request. You're now no longer part of the United Nations." It took all of 3 days to resolve the issue. So a week later, another article appeared in The Guardian. Here's what it said: the Jehovah's Witnesses have hurriedly disaffiliated from the United Nations within days of a Guardian story, in which members accused the sect of hypocrisy for supporting an organization it has repeatedly denounced privately. Second Corinthians 6 verse 14 says that if we're going to serve God, we cannot be what? Unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness? Now, that experience of the Jehovah's Witnesses is interesting for us today because in the last 6 months or so, it's become rather common knowledge within the Seventh Adventist Church that we're in much the same situation that the Jehovah's Witnesses found themselves in. And we have discovered that for 40 years, since 1985, our church has been recognized by the United Nations as an approved NGO. And there's a lot of people that are very disturbed about that. And I'm one of them. I believe the Bible is very clear that we should not be in these kinds of relationships. We can see all the reasons why. I've shared just a few of them right here. Jesus made it very clear in that third temptation. He was going to build his kingdom, but he was not going to use the world's methods. And he was not going to place himself under the devil's power and authority, which is what you're doing if you're recognized by the United Nations. It's very clear that all of these nonprofits that are recognized are there in order to repeat and disseminate the message and the mission of the United Nations. So we'll conclude with this, the Great Controversy, page 588. The line of distinction between professed Christians and the ungodly is now hardly distinguishable. Church members love what the world loves and are ready to join with them. And Satan determines to unite them in one body and thus strengthen his cause by sweeping all into the ranks of spiritualism. Papists who boast of miracles as a certain sign of the true church will be readily deceived by this wonder-working power. And Protestants, having cast away the shield of truth, will also be deluded. Papists, Protestants, and worldlings will alike accept the form of godliness without the power. And they will see in this grand movement for the conversion of the world and the ushering in of the long-expected millennium. This is still God's church, and God is still in control of it. You know, he allowed Jerusalem to continue going down its path for 39 years. We've been 40 years in this arrangement with the United Nations. I don't know how long God's going to allow it, but I have no doubt that God's going to fix the problem. Be praying about it. Pray for the people, pray for our leaders. Ask God to work his solution in his time. But we need to remember that there's only one safe way to determine truth, and that is what God says. Not what we think, not what we feel, but what God says. And if we put our foundation there, God promises that he will bring us home.
All right. Well,
Wow.
panelists.
3 days.
I don't
What
have a
a
question.
shame.
I don't have a question. I just want to hear
Shame
your
on
thoughts.
us.
Say it again.
Oh,
Shame
I
on
tell you
us.
what.
She didn't say it.
3 days. They saw the problem. People raised their voice, and within 3 days, it was solved. Shame on the SDA.
Here's what's embarrassing
Shame
for
on
me.
us.
Shame on us.
Jehovah's Witnesses are the head in this, and we're setting ourselves up to be the tail at best. We should, but we should know better. We have the prophetic truth.
Mm-hmm.
We have the understanding,
Mm.
and to allow ourselves to get into this situation, like Andrea said, it's shameful, but it can be fixed, and it can be fixed quickly.
Amen.
Will we do it? We are to be a peculiar people,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not showing a peculiarity in any way by banding with something like the UN, a spiritualistic organization.
Yep.
How do they do it? What do we do?
Where the members raised their voice, and then the leaders actually listen.
So what do we do? Do we start a petition? Do we start what do we do?
That was a question that
Yeah.
somebody laid on my heart too, and it's amazing that
Does
my wife
each
said
local
this.
church raise a vote? And so does it as like
Yeah, there's a
church?
way to start a petition to bring it to the forefront. And in that petition, the argument has to be strong. And I need to pray about it, because I spoke to Tim. I suggested it to him too. He said we should pray first.
Absolutely.
And then bring that up as something to be considered as a vote.
Where Brother Hank has started something up with SDA Pearl, we probably would need someone along the lines that this is their passion to really start that grassroots movement with this. But prayer first, of course.
3 days though, they recognize. Okay, so we know pray about everything. We know, but like, how many fastings and prayers do we need?
Right.
We just need prayer how to do it, not if we should do it,
And not when. I guess.
I was just going to ask what's been the feedback from the letter that went out from Gideon. Has there been I think it was that ministry that sent a letter out, a petition?
Has
there been any response to that?
Ardmore Church?
Yeah, has there been any response to that letter?
I'm in touch with them. There hasn't been anything.
I think it's cricket.
It just hit a black hole. You know how that goes.
I think we need to consult the Jehovah's Witness crew. Figure out.
Yeah, I was
do?
seriously waiting to sit down with one of their leaders and say,
Like who? I want to know.
Can we get into this story a little bit?
This
And
isn't.
that's shameful.
Hold on. This
I'll be quiet.
You're doing good.
I think most of our people feel like it's pointless. I'm gonna be honest. Nobody wants to really say that, but most people, and
that's how I'm feeling right now. I'll be honest.
Let me tell you why, Brother Justin, I say that. Like, again, I go back to this call. The pastor said he was looking at all the comments, and he said, yeah, people seem to be pretty much in favor with what you guys are saying. They're like on board. But then I went to look at GC, and where are they?
Well, I was trying to pick it.
He said they must not really believe that. And I said, look, bro, I said, I'm going to be honest. Most people, you didn't see at GC, number one, most people feel powerless, like it doesn't matter because their concerns are not being immediately addressed. And so that's why I asked about the Ardmore Church, and I wondered, has there been a response?
Well, we just saw what happened with Dr. Vine. And as our dear brother Justin so eloquently prayed in his prayer, it was a year. So 3 days, guys. Let's just keep that blows my mind.
That's so smart.
But
there's a reason for that.
There's a reason for that. Yes. So, but when we're looking at it now, and we're looking at who was there at GC, and I appreciate you saying that, but why wouldn't we care after seeing what Dr. Vine's persistence and his intentional education of himself and his church that he attended, because I'm sure they all did not have the understanding until it was brought forth, like he shared. So why? And it's true. And so for me, I can say I get excited and I have a strong voice here in this situation, and then I go upstairs and I go to work, and then I have my kids and then life happens, and then I come back down. And so I understand that it can be easily unintentionally forgotten or pushed to the way by the side because there's so many other immediate pressing things happening in our lives. And then SDA Pro, I'm like, oh yes, this is exactly what they've been trying to do. Where are the people who are standing with them? And I agree, Brother Brian, but Tyler, because I was ready to go to Staples, get signs and pickets and be at GC, like
I've heard this before. I've heard this strategy before.
Upside down, like my dear Savior. Like, no, this is not going to be a house of sing-songs and just hanging out for 2 weeks. We need to flip some tables up in here. But I got scared because my brothers weren't with me. My brothers. My brothers were not with me.
Wait a minute.
They were not. They were ready to go back home.
We said we need to find out.
I was licking my wounds, man, and she wouldn't even let me. She wouldn't even let me heal up.
They were full of putrefying wounds, and I was like ready to throw stones, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe I was trying to move a little too quick, and they were definitely moving way too slow.
Yeah.
But
I get it.
Fine.
I get where
like,
you were
I don't
coming
know.
from.
Like, for me, I do think because I guess in my mind, I did not have an expectation for GC to do anything without a loud noise. So, and I'm sure JW, they made a loud noise for 3 days. You can't do that in 3 days and kind of being like, oh, well, how should we go about it? Like, truth is truth. Fact is fact. We don't really need to pray about much, but for God to just, as we get there and arrive, for him to, since he's already there, because he already knows, and we all already know this is not the way, that he's already there. He's just waiting for us to show up. I mean, what are we praying for?
Yeah, let me explain a little bit why I think.
And help me understand. I'm open to hear.
Yes. I can explain why I think the JWs were so successful, and some of our men just kind of acting like dumb dog who refuse to bark. Let me explain why. I think this is what's going on. In their own study, JW, Jehovah Witnesses, How the World Will Come to an End. And if you go there, they do have an interpretation along the line of identifying the United Nations with the harlot of Babylon. So there is a theological behind it as well. So it's because of that theological position, there it is right there in question number 6. So God's word identifies the harlot, attackers of the wild beast with the 10 horns. A study of the book of Revelation shows that the wild beast refers to the United Nations. So we don't have that interpretation. While we think the United Nation has a role, a connection with the harlot, but we cannot go to the Bible and says most definitely this is the United Nations. Like they believe that.
Doesn't the Pope? Okay, so the United Nations doesn't.
I would interject into that, Brother James, and I would say that the nations represent the kings of the earth. So we don't exclude the United Nations, because in Matthew 24,
that's what I was going to say.
It states clearly that those very nations that were warring and angry, they will unite to oppress the remnant. So we believe
absolutely.
I
was gonna say too that is actually true. We can make an argument for it. Right, but it's not a doctrinal position where we identify theologically the United Nations as that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what makes it a little difficult. The leaders can easily say, and I've heard this, by the way, from some ministers. That's how I'm bringing this up. The UN is not in prophecy.
The UN isn't in prophecy.
That's what they say.
The Pope sits as a...
Exactly.
The Pope sits in the UN. From what I've learned from SDA, and just looking a little bit on my own, but doesn't the Pope have a powerful influence on the UN?
Wait a minute.
Even though they don't have a vote or something.
Yeah. They are like a tentacles, right? If the Pope is if the harlot controls the beast of the nations, the UN, of course, is under the leadership of the
I was like, the UN's not.
These are the kings.
Yeah. These are the kings that he does have a say. But what I'm trying to say is,
we don't have it written like that. Is that what you mean?
We don't have it written like that.
Yeah, it's right there in Matthew 24.
It is right
Well,
there.
in other words,
it's in
the
Matthew
UN
24.
is not the harlot itself. We're not identifying the harlot as the United Nations.
Yeah, we
but
don't.
It's very much in the text. That
But they're so connected. It's
yes.
That's what I mean. It's just...
It is connected, yes. But but I'm saying the leaders could easily.
But they just have something that they have written.
They have it written, so
they
have a position, theological position on this that they base on eschatological position, I should say.
I understand what you're saying.
That's why they can.
James, go to Matthew 24:9. It's. I don't think that they're excluded, and if they're united, then it's a conglomerate of all of them. In Matthew 24:9, it's right there.
There it is. Okay. And then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted. And
it says all nations. So if the nations are united, they're being mentioned here in Matthew 24.
Mercy. No, I agree with you.
So we could vote this language into our manual, then we have a fight.
Yeah.
Because I was about to say, because, all right, again, and I've heard that argument too, which is it's a false argument. It doesn't make any sense, right? So we are not saying, to be very clear and specific, we are not identifying the United Nations as the harlot.
no.
Okay? But the kings of the earth are right there in the same passage,
Yep.
which would absolutely include the United Nations. So to say that it's not in prophecy is a total lie. It is with all due respect to those who are saying that.
Yeah.
You have to show me how that's not how the United Nations are not connected, identified as the kings of the. You got to show me that.
It's the same dumb argument like, well, smoking cigarettes is not in the Bible, so
Yeah.
I can do that.
But this
Yeah.
one's actually in the Bible.
Yeah.
No,
I think they call that.
because
Yeah.
it's not spelt out United Nations.
Mhm.
It's dumb.
Because it
okay,
takes
let's just call it
It's
what
a,
it
it's
is.
a, it's a
dumb.
fallacy. They're arguing in
Yeah.
silence. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, yeah. Because it's not spelled out, therefore we
So-
cannot include it.
So here's my
Right.
question:
yeah.
Being
We
why
might need a Bible study, y'all. We might need to do a Bible study.
Oh, certainly. do. And by the
This
way,
is
SDA Pearl did address it one time here before. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, nice.